Hello, Team Basecamp. Hey, Coach Tim here with the 10 a.m. workout review for Basecamp aerobic endurance, cadence ramps, and low cadence tempo. We need to shorten our names. Real quick, I want to talk about a concept. In my last Nerdcast, I put out Concepts and Adaptation in Lesson 1. We talked about the SSA model, and this is it. So, what it is for those who haven't had a chance to see that, when we think about how a workout impacts you, and we're going to call you the system, right? There are some ways that we can measure that impact. The SSA, or the stress, strain, and adaptation model, is the way that we use. And what does that mean, measure that? Well, it allows us to quantify the stress and the strain. The adaptation does come a little later, but allows us to quantify stress and strain. So at the core level of this model is we start by applying stress to the system. Remember, you're the system. Stress, the way we measure that external load being applied to the system is watts, power, right? We're using a power measurement. If you're going 50 watts, 100 watts, or 400 watts, we're applying less or more stress, right? As the watts go up, it's more stress because you're going harder, and that's putting you under, a greater load, more stress. It's a measurement of that stress you're placing on the system. Now, then when you place that external load, that stress on the system, I decide I'm going to go 400 watts. The system undergoes strain. It responds to that 400 watts, not right away. Like nothing really changes for the first 10, 15 seconds, right? You're going hard. But then suddenly things start to change. It gets harder. You breathe heavier. Your heart pounds. All those things happen. That's because you've applied a stress. And after that stress has some impact on the system undergoes strain. And we can measure that strain by taking a look at heart rate. Now, if you watch the Nerdcast, I'll give you a whole bunch of ways we here at Basecamp use optimized training formats and multifaceted training formats to maximize that stress-strain relationship through what we call manipulations. Like we manipulate how those two interact. So put that, and then if we do that well, we want the appropriate adaptation. You get bigger, faster, stronger, whatever it is you're looking for. So remember, stress, external load, strain, what happens to the system, you, when we apply stress. Now, let's take a look at today's workout. We're going to review Dan here. Dan did a great job in our workout. We had some fun. Thanks, everybody. The science was kind of fun. The soul boom, right? That's the word of the day. Soul boom. That was funny. Okay, let's take a look at Dan's workout. Dan, great job all week, turning everything green. Even these are green. The yellow, you can see the little arrow. Here's a trick, everybody. It's pointing up. He did a little extra in this warm up and a little less here. So if you balance it out, he was spot on. So awesome work. Everything's green. Consistency is so important. I can click into the workout and quickly see it was planned for an hour. You did an hour 46 TSS was on the plan. You did 54. Little bit longer. You actually went a little bit harder, which is fine if it's just a little bit. So let's dig in and look. I click the Analyze button. Remember the name, we went over this Tuesday. This is the workout graph. I can see the workout graph. I have workout summary data here, and I have a bunch of data here. But for today, we're going to focus on the graph again. Now you notice this way Zwift handles a structured workout and the way we build them on Training Peaks, they handle them slightly different. So they don't always line up perfectly. It really is nothing but a technology reality of how the timing plays out when we load the workouts to Zwift. So they don't always match perfect, but you get the idea. You can clearly see, remember our pink line is power. The blue squares are the prescribed workout and the pink line is power. So you can pretty much see right from the get-go, he did this workout as planned. Again, subtle difference between Training Peaks and what we have on Zwift, but generally the same workout. So great job on that, Dan. Now, let's go back to this concept. Remember, external load is a watt. So this gives us an understanding, power being this, the pink line, watts, which if I click on W, I can hide or show others or whatever, but I can hide or show. I can see that his power, the workout did, he vacillated the amount of stress he was applying to the system. Sometimes it was a little lower, sometimes it was a little higher, sometimes it was even higher than that, right? So now we understand we can quantify the stress, and we can look at this stress over here in the workout summary. And if I scroll down, see how I did that? I'm just scrolling down. Here I can see power. His minimum was 1 watt. His maximum was 330, but his average was 238 watts. So I can understand the average, the overall stress. He had an average of 238 watts for the hour, 4 minutes, whatever the workout was. And I can see how he executed that, sometimes higher, sometimes lower. So we applied stress in this dynamic format that we call a workout. But what happened to him when we applied that stress? Now that we understand the workout, I'm going to click on the little workout. I got a box in the way. Click on the little workout, and I'm going to hide it, just so now we just see the power, the stress line. Now I'm going to click on BPM, show. Now I can see his heart rate. So look what happens here. Remember, we apply stress to the system, and after a little bit of time, the system undergoes strain. We can measure stress with watts, and heart rate is the easiest way to measure strain. So we see here he's doing his fast pedals, really is just generally bringing up his heart rate as a whole. You don't really see overly spiky here. He's still pretty fresh and just getting everything working. Settles into the first 5-minute aerobic section. We start doing the fast cadence. He's pedaling faster and faster. And look what's happening to his heart rate. It's kind of tracking up. He stops pedaling, or not stops, he slows down to low power, and it takes it a little while to come down. So one of the things you're seeing here is stress results in strain, but there's some form of a delay. It doesn't seem to track at the same time. The overarching science of this is known as VO2 kinetics, and we'll dig more into that in the next 2 weeks. But the reality is the timing is not the same. So as we do the efforts that you see here in Basecamp, oftentimes we understand that we're managing that stress-strain relationship to get a specific adaptation. So we can watch his heart rate get higher. And you notice, even though he's doing the same power for the last high cadence interval, his actual heart rate's peaking a little higher each time. The peak here in the first one was 159. Here it was 163. So beyond the fact that we're applying stress, the stress load is the same, the watts are exactly the same, strain is changing. That's something I can see, because I can see the peak strain here is 159, but here it's actually 4 beats higher, 163. What's happening? What's changing? Well, more on that next week. But learn to identify what you're looking at in your workout graph. Something changed. The relationship between stress and strain is not linear. That's the terminology. And we're just working today and identifying that. Then here you can actually see he does his 5-minute. We did a tempo, the hardest power section of it all. And look, his heart rate doesn't get up to that 163 at all. So even though we went here, his peak power was 289, here he was doing 309, and his heart rate was lower. So some reason it had less strain, less measured strain by heart rate. This is the reality of manipulating the stress-strain relationships. One of the ways we'll do that in the first 2 weeks and introduce everybody to understanding this is we use cadence. The technical term is we use neuromuscular manipulation to impact or manage the relationship between stress and strain. So if I show cadence now, we can see that we were doing high cadence. You can see his step up and hitting cadence targets. They get higher in these high cadence ramps, and they actually almost correlate more with his heart rate. That's because we're manipulating how he's making power right? We're manipulating that relationship between stress and strain. And the simplest way to think about it is we're shifting the training, we're applying the same stress, but we're shifting the way it impacts the system. We're shifting the strain away from his neuromuscular system because he's not petting as forceful. He's not grinding it out, right? He's just nice, fast spin, but we're increasing the cardiovascular strain. He's having more muscle contractions overall to go that fast. So he needs more oxygen delivered to the system. So his heart rate comes up with a little bit of delay. It's not linear. His heart rate comes up. So this in its very simple format, and we'll talk more about this next week. We'll get deeper. But in its very simple format, one of the key manipulations we can do to make more productive training is manipulate the stress-strain relationship through the utilization of neuromuscular manipulation or cadence. And our goal is to not make you the super fast pedaler or super slow pedaler or anything. We're actually, trying to optimize your training time by manipulating that stress-strain relationship. And then two, we do want to have an impact on your power output on these neuromuscular manipulations. We actually want to improve your versatility. But again, more on that next week. So now as you can look through this, it almost makes a little better sense. Because then when he did low cadence here, even though the effort was way higher, now he's grinding, right? So he's having less muscle contractions, more forceful. He's got to squeeze a little harder. He's got to push harder, but not as many contractions, because instead of doing 100 RPM, he's only doing 65, right? Less contractions. So he doesn't have the oxygen demand. That's why his heart rate doesn't get as high. We've increased the force demand, the neuromuscular demand, and we've decreased the cardiovascular demand. And we manipulated the relationship the other way. Earlier, right, we're increasing cardiovascular demand and decreasing muscular demand. Here we are increasing neuromuscular demand and decreasing cardiovascular demand. Now, if you didn't follow all that, watch the last Nerdcast I put out. Just watch the first section 1 is on the SSA model. It'll explain it a little deeper. Now, when I look at the summary of this, I can begin to just look at the numbers. I now can say he did 238 watts as an average, and his heart rate was 144 as an average. And as we get deeper into learning how to read your graphs, we're going to do a deeper dive on those numbers also next week. But the fundamental thing I want everybody to understand, stress, strain, adaptation. But when you're reviewing the graph, we're really looking at stress and strain and how our program manipulates that relationship to optimize your training time and get true performance results. Thanks, everybody, for being on. That was a really fun workout. I enjoyed that one. I hope you did too. Talk to you soon.